r/pettyrevenge passenger stole my seat so I got them kicked off the flight. Passenger stole my seat so I got them kicked off the flight. The smell of stale coffee and recycled air hit me as I stepped onto the red-eye flight to Denver, my boarding pass clutched in my sweaty palm. Seat 12C, aisle, exit row, extra legroom. I'd paid an extra $89 for that specific seat because I'm 6 feet 3 inches and had a career-defining presentation at 9 a.m. that required me to actually function like a human being instead of a pretzel. What I found instead was a woman in her 50s sprawled across my seat like she owned the entire aircraft. "Excuse me," I said, keeping my voice level despite my heart rate spiking. "I think you're in my seat." She looked up from her phone with the kind of expression usually reserved for people who've just stepped in dog shit. "I don't think so, sweetie." Sweetie, the audacity was breathtaking. I held up my boarding pass, pointing to the clearly printed 12C in bold letters. "This is definitely my seat. C. 12C. Without even glancing at my pass, she waved me off with a dismissive flick of her wrist. "I'm not moving. I got here first, and possession is 9/10 of the law. Find somewhere else to sit." The passenger behind me cleared his throat impatiently, and I could feel the line backing up. My face burned with embarrassment and rage. This wasn't just about a seat, this was about respect, basic human decency, and the fact that I absolutely needed those extra few inches of legroom to survive a 5-hour flight before the most important meeting of my career. "Ma'am, you need to check your boarding pass," I tried again, my customer service voice strained to its breaking point. "This seat is assigned to me. And I'm telling you I'm not moving." She turned back to her phone, effectively dismissing me like I was some annoying child. "Deal with it." The flight attendant, a tired-looking guy in his 30s, finally made his way over. "Is there a problem here?" "Yes," I said quickly, relief flooding through me. "This passenger is sitting in my assigned seat." I showed him my boarding pass, expecting swift justice. Instead, he barely glanced at it before turning to the woman. "Ma'am, could I see your boarding pass?" She rummaged through an oversized purse that was taking up half the aisle and produced a crumpled piece of paper. The flight attendant studied both passes, then looked back at me with an expression that made my stomach drop. "Well," he said slowly, "technically she does have a seat assignment for 18F, but the flight is pretty full tonight." He trailed off, clearly hoping I'd just volunteer to solve the problem myself. "So you're saying I should give up the seat I paid extra for because she decided to upgrade herself?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. The flight attendant shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we can find you something else. The flight really needs to push back on time." I stared at him in disbelief. Behind me, more passengers were boarding, and I could hear murmurs of annoyance about the holdup. The woman in my seat smirked triumphantly, already spreading out like she was settling in for the long haul. That's when something inside me snapped. Not into rage, into something much more dangerous. Ice-cold calculation. If this entitled passenger thought she could steamroll her way into my seat and the crew wasn't going to help me, then fine. I'd handle this my own way. I just needed to pay attention. "You know what?" "Fine," I said, forcing my voice to sound defeated. The flight attendant's shoulders sagged with relief, and the woman in my seat didn't even bother looking up from her phone. "I'll find somewhere else." But I didn't move down the aisle. Instead, I stepped back and squeezed into an empty middle seat in row 11, directly behind my stolen seat. Close enough to observe. Close enough to watch this woman who thought she was so clever. The flight attendant hurried away, probably thinking he dodged a bullet by avoiding confrontation. Poor guy had no idea what he'd just enabled. As passengers continued boarding, I pulled out my phone and started taking notes. Not obvious photos, I wasn't trying to be creepy, but mental notes that I immediately typed into my notes app. The woman had made herself completely at home in 12C, and she was already breaking rules. First violation, her oversized purse was shoved under the seat in front of her, but it was clearly too large for the space and was protruding into the aisle. I watched 3 passengers have to step around it, including an elderly man with a cane who nearly stumbled. Second violation, she had what appeared to be a full McDonald's meal spread across her tray table, which she'd put down during boarding. The smell of fries was overwhelming, and I was pretty sure outside food wasn't supposed to be consumed during boarding procedures. Third violation, and this was the interesting one, she was talking loudly on her phone, and I couldn't help but overhear. "No, Richard, I told you I'm not paying for upgraded seats. This is just as good, and what are they going to do? Throw me off the plane?" She cackled at her own cleverness. "Besides, I told them I have a medical condition that requires aisle access." I typed faster. Medical condition fraud was serious business with airlines. The flight attendant, his name tag said Marcus, came back through to check overhead bins. I flagged him down. "Hey, sorry to bother you again," I said quietly. I noticed the passenger in 12C has her bag blocking the aisle. I saw someone almost trip. Marcus glanced over and frowned. The purse was definitely a safety hazard. He approached the woman. "Ma'am, I need you to store that bag properly. It can't extend into the aisle." "It's fine where it is," she said without looking up from her phone call. "For safety reasons, it needs to fit completely under the seat or go in the overhead bin." She huffed dramatically and shoved the bag further under the seat, but it still protruded. Marcus looked like he was about to say something else when the woman suddenly clutched her chest. "I have a heart condition," she announced loudly. "I need to keep my medications close to me at all times. This is discrimination against disabled passengers." I watched Marcus's face change. Airlines were terrified of disability discrimination lawsuits. He backed off immediately. "Of course, ma'am. Just try to keep the aisle clear when possible." She smirked as he walked away. That smirk told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't her first rodeo. But here's what she didn't know, I traveled for work constantly. I knew airline policies inside and out. And I also knew that claiming a fake disability to get preferential treatment wasn't just unethical, it was actually illegal under federal law. I opened my laptop and connected to the airport's Wi-Fi. Time to do some research. The plane's engine started up, and we began taxiing toward the runway. The woman was still on her phone, still eating her McDonald's, still taking up my seat with her entitled attitude. She thought she'd won. She had no idea the game was just getting started. As we taxied toward the runway, I dove deeper into my research. The airport Wi-Fi was surprisingly decent, and within minutes I had the airline's official policy manual pulled up on my laptop. I bookmarked this stuff years ago after a particularly nightmarish travel experience. Knowledge is power when you're dealing with airline bureaucracy. What I found was fascinating. The woman in my seat wasn't just being rude, she was racking up violations like she was going for some kind of record. The fake medical condition claim was the big one. According to federal regulations, falsely claiming a disability to receive accommodations was not only fraud but could result in immediate removal from the aircraft and potential criminal charges. But I needed proof she was lying. I didn't have to wait long. During the safety demonstration, she answered another phone call, which was violation number 4 since we were supposed to have phones in airplane mode during taxi. But more importantly, I heard her say, "Oh, the heart condition thing. Please, I use that excuse every time I fly. Works like a charm. These flight attendants are so scared of lawsuits they'll let you get away with murder." I immediately started recording audio on my phone. Not illegal since we were in a public space and she was talking loud enough for half the cabin to hear. But then things got more interesting. A passenger across the aisle asked if she could please turn down her phone conversation, and the woman absolutely exploded. "Mind your own damn business," she shrieked. "I have every right to use my phone. This is America." Marcus appeared instantly. "Ma'am, please keep your voice down and put your phone in airplane mode. We're preparing for takeoff. I told you, I have a medical condition." She was practically shouting now. "My doctor said I need to stay in contact with my cardiologist during flights. This is medical discrimination. The thing is, if she really had a serious heart condition requiring constant medical contact, she would have needed special documentation filed with the airline in advance. I knew this because my dad actually did have a heart condition, and the hoops he had to jump through for medical exemptions were extensive." Marcus looked uncertain again, but I could see other passengers getting agitated. A mother with a baby was trying to shush her crying infant, and the woman's shouting was making it worse. "Ma'am, if you have medical documentation for phone use during flight, I'll need to see it. I don't need to show you anything. This is harassment." That's when she made her fatal mistake. She stood up abruptly, waving her arms dramatically, and I got a perfect view of her seat. Not only was there no medical documentation visible, but I could clearly see her actual boarding pass had fallen onto the floor. Row 18, seat F. Just like Marcus had said earlier. I quickly snapped a photo of the boarding pass on the floor, making sure the seat number was clearly visible. Then I texted the photo to myself for backup and slipped my phone back into my pocket. But the woman wasn't done. She was now berating Marcus at full volume, and her McDonald's had spilled across the tray table and onto the floor. The smell of ketchup mixed with airplane disinfectant was making people around her visibly uncomfortable. "This is the worst service I've ever experienced," she bellowed. "I'm going to report all of you. I'll have your jobs." A businessman in row 10 called out, "Can someone please handle this? Some of us are trying to rest." "Shut up," she screamed back at him. "Nobody asked you." I watched Marcus's face change. The uncertainty was gone, replaced by something much more professional and cold. He picked up the airplane phone and spoke quietly into it. Within 30 seconds, 2 more flight attendants appeared, along with someone in a pilot's uniform. The woman seemed to realize she might have pushed too far, because she suddenly sat down and tried to look innocent. But it was too late. I could see them conferring in hushed tones, occasionally glancing her way. The plane had stopped moving. The pilot, Captain Rodriguez according to his name tag, approached our row with the kind of calm authority that comes from dealing with difficult passengers for 20 years. The woman immediately switched tactics, her voice dropping to what I'm sure she thought was a sweet, reasonable tone. "Captain, thank goodness you're here. Your flight attendant has been absolutely horrible to me. I have a serious medical condition, and he's been harassing me about my necessary medications and refusing to accommodate my disability." Captain Rodriguez nodded politely. "I understand your concern, ma'am. Can you show me your medical documentation for the accommodations you're requesting?" Her face flickered with panic for just a moment before the indignation returned. "I shouldn't have to prove my medical condition to you. That's private health information. This is a violation of my HIPAA rights." I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. HIPAA had absolutely nothing to do with airline safety regulations, but people threw it around like a magic legal shield whenever they got caught lying about medical issues. "Ma'am, federal aviation regulations require documentation for any medical exemptions during flight operations," the captain explained patiently. "If you don't have proper documentation, I'll need you to comply with standard safety procedures." "This is discrimination," she shot back, but I could hear the uncertainty creeping into her voice. "I'm going to sue this airline for everything it's worth." Captain Rodriguez glanced at Marcus, who leaned in and whispered something I couldn't quite catch. Then the captain's expression shifted slightly. "Ma'am, I'm also going to need to see your boarding pass to verify your seat assignment." The color drained from her face. "My boarding pass? Why do you need that?" "Standard procedure when there are seating disputes." She fumbled through her purse, taking way longer than necessary. I watched her glance down at the floor where her real boarding pass was still lying, partially hidden under the seat in front of her. I must have left it at the gate," she stammered. "But I've been sitting here this whole time, so obviously this is my seat." "Actually," I said quietly, standing up from my middle seat in row 11. "I think her boarding pass fell on the floor." All eyes turned to me. The woman's face went white as Captain Rodriguez bent down and picked up the crumpled piece of paper. "Row 18, seat F," he read aloud. "Miss Henderson, is this your boarding pass?" The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Other passengers were openly staring now, some holding up phones to record what was clearly about to become a viral moment. That could be anyone's boarding pass," she said weakly. "It has your name on it," Captain Rodriguez replied, his voice still professional but with an edge that hadn't been there before. "Linda Henderson, seat 18F. I pulled out my own boarding pass and held it up. And this is mine. Seat 12C. Where she's currently sitting. The woman, Linda, looked around desperately, as if searching for allies or an escape route. Finding neither, she tried one last gambit. Fine. So I made a mistake about my seat. People switch seats all the time. This is ridiculous. You're going to delay an entire flight over a simple misunderstanding. Ma'am, Captain Rodriguez said, it's not just about the seat. I'm told you've been disruptive, refused to follow safety instructions, falsely claimed medical exemptions, and used your phone during taxi operations. These are serious safety violations. I have rights, she shrieked, her composure finally cracking completely. You can't treat passengers like this. I'll have your license. But Captain Rodriguez was already turning to Marcus. Please call ground control and request gate return. We need to remove a disruptive passenger. The plane started turning around. Linda Henderson was about to learn that actions have consequences. The plane's engines wound down as we pulled back toward the gate, and Linda Henderson's panic was becoming palpable. She kept looking around like a cornered animal, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. Wait, she said, her voice rising to a near shriek. You can't be serious. I'm not getting off this plane. I have important business in Denver. Captain Rodriguez remained unnaturally calm. Ma'am, the decision has been made. Please gather your belongings. No. She crossed her arms and pressed herself deeper into my seat. I refuse. You'll have to drag me off, and then we'll see how that looks on the news. Oh, she was really going there. The woman was actually threatening to make them physically remove her, apparently having learned nothing from every airline incident that had gone viral in the past decade. Marcus stepped forward with 2 other flight attendants flanking him. Miss Henderson, please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. I'm not going anywhere. She was full on shouting now. This is assault. This is illegal detention. Someone call 911. A passenger 2 rows back actually started laughing. Lady, you are the emergency they'd respond to. That's when Linda made her second catastrophic mistake of the evening. She whipped around to face the laughing passenger and screamed, "Shut your mouth before I shut it for you." The threat of violence was apparently the final straw. Captain Rodriguez picked up the plane's intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're returning to the gate to resolve a passenger issue. We apologize for the delay and appreciate your patience. But Linda wasn't done digging her grave. As we pulled up to the gate, she suddenly jumped up and tried to push past Marcus toward the front of the plane. I'm getting off on my own terms, she declared. Not because you fascists are kicking me off. Marcus gently but firmly blocked her path. Ma'am, please return to your seat until we're properly docked. Don't touch me, she screamed, even though he'd barely made contact. That's assault. Everyone saw it. You assaulted a disabled passenger. I had to admire the commitment to her fake medical condition, even as her entire story was falling apart. The other passengers were getting restless. A businessman across the aisle called out, "Just get her off the plane so we can get going." Others started voicing similar sentiments. Linda spun around to face the cabin full of irritated travelers. You people are all sheep. This could happen to any of you. They're violating my constitutional rights. Your constitutional right to steal someone else's seat, came a voice from the back. The plane jerked slightly as we docked at the gate. Through the window, I could see airport security and what looked like federal air marshals waiting on the jet bridge. Someone had clearly called ahead. Linda saw them too. Her face went completely white. This is insane, she whispered, then louder, this is insane. All of this over a seat. I'll move to my assigned seat. Problem solved. Captain Rodriguez shook his head. It's beyond that now, ma'am. You've violated multiple federal aviation safety regulations. But I was just. For the first time all evening, Linda Henderson seemed to realize she'd stepped in something much bigger than a simple seat dispute. The jet bridge connected with a soft thump, and I could see the security officer starting to board. Linda looked at me with something between hatred and desperation. This is all your fault, she hissed. You could have just found another seat. I met her gaze steadily. You're right. I could have. But then you wouldn't have learned that actions have consequences. The footsteps of security were getting closer. Linda Henderson's flight was officially over. The security officers boarded with the kind of practiced efficiency that told me this wasn't their first rodeo with an unruly passenger. 2 airport security guards flanked by what was definitely a federal air marshal. You could spot them a mile away by their calm alertness and the way their jackets hung just slightly wrong over concealed weapons. Linda took one look at them and made her third catastrophic decision of the night. She bolted. Not toward the exit, that would have been too logical. Instead, she shoved past Marcus and sprinted toward the back of the plane, apparently thinking she could hide in a lavatory or something equally brilliant. The entire cabin erupted. Passengers were pulling out phones, some standing up to get a better view, others ducking down like they expected gunfire. A woman near the back screamed as Linda barreled past her, knocking her purse into the aisle. Ma'am, stop right there. The air marshal's voice cut through the chaos with absolute authority. But Linda was beyond rational thought. She'd made it about halfway down the aisle when she apparently realized her escape plan had some serious flaws. The back of the plane was a dead end, security was behind her, and 30 angry passengers were blocking her path. She spun around, wild-eyed and breathing hard. Stay back. All of you just stay back. The air marshal raised his hands in a calming gesture. Nobody wants to hurt you. Just take a deep breath and walk toward the front of the plane. No. Linda's voice cracked. You people have destroyed my life. I'm going to miss my business meeting. My whole deal is going to fall apart. That's when I realized the beautiful irony of the situation. She was panicking about missing an important business meeting, the exact same thing I'd been worried about when she stole my seat. The difference was, my meeting was real, and I'd handled the situation like an adult instead of a toddler having a meltdown. Ma'am, the longer you resist, the worse this gets for you, Captain Rodriguez called from the front. Right now we're looking at simple violations. Don't make this a federal incident. But Linda was spiraling completely. She grabbed the headrest of an aisle seat and used it to steady herself, breathing like she'd just run a marathon. I can't breathe, she gasped. My heart condition. I need my medication. Even now, she was still clinging to that lie. The air marshal's expression didn't change, but I saw him exchange a glance with one of the security guards. Where's your medication? He asked calmly. Linda gestured vaguely toward the front of the plane. My purse, it's in my purse. The purse that's been under seat 12C this whole time, with no medication visible. I found myself saying. Every head in the cabin turned toward me. Linda's face went through about 6 different expressions before settling on pure rage. You, she pointed a shaking finger at me. This is all because of you. You vindictive little man. The air marshal's voice snapped her attention back to him. I need you to calm down and move toward the front of the aircraft. Now. But Linda had reached some kind of breaking point. Instead of complying, she did something that shocked even me. She plopped down right in the middle of the aisle, crossed her arms, and declared, I'm not moving. If you want me off this plane, you'll have to carry me. The collective groan from the other passengers was audible. Someone in the back shouted, Are you kidding me right now? The air marshal sighed and spoke into his radio. We're going to need additional personnel and possibly a stretcher. Linda's eyes went wide. A stretcher? You can't. I'm not crazy. I just want to fly to Denver. Then you should have stayed in your assigned seat and followed basic safety regulations, came a voice from somewhere in the middle of the cabin. As Linda sat there in the aisle, surrounded by federal agents and angry passengers, still clinging to her fake medical condition and stolen seat, I realized something profound had just happened. Justice wasn't always swift, but sometimes it was absolutely perfect. The stretcher was on its way. The stretcher arrived faster than I expected, wheeled in by 2 EMTs who looked like they'd seen every possible variation of human stupidity during their careers. Linda's eyes went wide when she saw them approaching. Wait, no. I don't need medical attention, she backpedaled frantically, scrambling to get up from her seated position in the aisle. I was making a point. The lead EMT, a woman with graying hair and the patience of a saint, knelt down beside Linda. Ma'am, you said you were having heart problems and couldn't breathe. We need to check you out. Linda's fake medical condition was rapidly becoming a real medical emergency as the lies compounded. I'm fine now. See? Totally fine. She jumped up and down in the aisle like some demented jack-in-the-box, trying to prove her perfect health. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a plastic airplane knife. But here's where things got complicated. The EMT wasn't buying it. Ma'am, if you've been claiming a heart condition to airline staff, we're required to evaluate you before you can be released, she explained with professional calm. It's liability protocol. Linda's face went through a rainbow of colors as the implications hit her. But you can't, this is ridiculous. Standard procedure, the air marshal chimed in, looking like he was enjoying this more than he should. Can't have passengers with undocumented medical emergencies walking around the airport. I watched Linda's brain trying to process her options. Option A, admit she'd been lying about the heart condition and face whatever legal consequences came with that. Option B, continue the charade and get strapped to a stretcher for a trip to the hospital. Neither was great, but Linda being Linda, she somehow found option C, double down on everything. Fine. Yes, I have a heart condition. But I'm telling you I'm stable right now. My medication is working. She was gesturing wildly, which probably didn't support her claims of cardiac stability. The EMT pulled out a blood pressure cuff. Then you won't mind if we take some vitals. I absolutely mind. This is harassment. Medical harassment. Behind me, I heard a passenger mutter, Lady, just take the L and get off the plane. But Linda had apparently decided that if she was going down, she was taking everyone with her. She turned to face the cabin full of increasingly hostile passengers. You people don't understand what's happening here, she announced. They're violating basic human rights. Today it's me, tomorrow it could be any of you. A businessman in row 8 stood up. Lady, you stole someone's seat, lied about having a medical condition, threatened other passengers, and tried to run away from security. This isn't a rights violation, this is consequences. I didn't threaten anyone. Linda protested. You told someone you'd shut their mouth for them, came a voice from the back. That wasn't a threat. That was just expressing frustration. The EMT stood up, clearly having reached the end of her patience. Ma'am, you have 2 choices. You can cooperate with a medical evaluation, or you can be transported to the hospital for a psychiatric hold. But either way, you're not staying on this airplane. That's when Linda played what she apparently thought was her ace card. You can't force medical treatment on me. I know my rights. I'm calling my lawyer. She pulled out her phone with a triumphant expression. The air marshal cleared his throat. Ma'am, that phone should have been in airplane mode for the past hour. Linda froze, phone halfway to her ear, as she realized she'd just confessed to another federal aviation violation in front of multiple witnesses. The silence stretched for a long moment as everyone processed the spectacular own goal she'd just scored. Then, from somewhere in the back of the plane, slow clapping started. It was going to be a very long night for Linda Henderson. The slow clapping spread through the cabin like wildfire, and Linda's face turned a shade of red I didn't know was humanly possible. But just when I thought this circus couldn't get any more entertaining, my phone buzzed with a text that made my stomach drop. Flight delayed indefinitely. Backup options limited. Meeting may need to be rescheduled. Sarah. Sarah was my assistant, and she'd been tracking our flight status. The reality hit me like a freight train. While I was enjoying Linda's public meltdown, my own career-defining presentation was slipping away minute by minute. I quickly did the math. We were already an hour behind schedule. Even if they removed Linda immediately and we took off right now, I'd land at 7 a.m. instead of 6 a.m. Add in baggage claim, ground transportation, and the fact that I still needed to shower and review my presentation materials. I was cutting it dangerously close. But Linda wasn't done making things worse for everyone. Stop clapping, she shrieked at the cabin. This isn't entertainment. This is a human rights violation. That's when she made what I can only describe as her most spectacularly stupid decision yet. She grabbed her oversized purse from under seat 12C, my seat, and started rummaging through it frantically. The air marshal immediately tensed. Ma'am, keep your hands visible. I'm getting my medication. Linda snapped back. You know, for my heart condition that you people keep saying I'm lying about. She pulled out a prescription bottle and held it up triumphantly. See? Proof. The EMT stepped forward and gently took the bottle. I watched her face change as she read the label. Ma'am, this is expired, she said quietly. By 3 years. The color drained from Linda's face. That's impossible. I just picked that up from the pharmacy. The expiration date is clearly printed here. March 2021. I actually felt sorry for her for about half a second. She'd been caught in lie after lie, and now even her proof was working against her. But then I remembered that her selfishness was potentially costing me the biggest opportunity of my career. Furthermore, the EMT continued, this medication is for acid reflux, not heart problems. The collective, oh, from the passengers was audible. Linda looked around desperately, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I have multiple prescriptions, that's just one of them. But nobody was buying it anymore. The air marshal stepped forward with zip tie restraints. Ma'am, you're under arrest for making false statements to federal aviation personnel, interfering with flight crew duties, and creating a public disturbance. That's when Linda completely lost it. No. No. You can't arrest me. I haven't done anything wrong. She tried to back away but bumped into the EMT. This is all his fault. She pointed directly at me. He started this whole thing. He could have just moved to another seat like a normal person. Every eye in the cabin turned to me again. The businessman from row 8 shook his head and called out, Lady, he had the seat assignment. You were literally stealing his seat. It's just a seat. Linda wailed. Just a stupid airplane seat. Nobody gets arrested over airplane seats. The air marshal began reading her rights as he secured the zip ties. You'd be surprised. As they finally began escorting her off the plane, Linda turned back one last time. I hope you miss your precious meeting, she screamed at me. I hope this ruins your whole life. The irony was almost beautiful. Because thanks to her tantrum, I just might. As Linda was finally dragged off the plane in zip ties, still screaming threats about lawsuits and constitutional violations, I thought the nightmare was over. I could finally claim my seat, we'd take off, and maybe, just maybe, I could salvage this situation. I was wrong. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, due to the security incident, we're required to conduct a full aircraft safety inspection before departure. We're looking at approximately a 2-hour delay. 2 hours. My presentation was at 9 a.m. sharp, and the client had made it crystal clear that punctuality was non-negotiable. This was a $2.3 million contract we were talking about, the kind of deal that could make or break careers. I slumped into my rightfully reclaimed seat 12C, finally enjoying the extra legroom I'd paid for, but it felt like a hollow victory. Around me, other passengers were checking their phones and making their own calculations. A woman across the aisle was rebooking a connecting flight. The businessman from row 8 was explaining to someone on the phone why he'd be late for his morning meetings. All because of Linda Henderson's entitled meltdown. But then Marcus approached my row, tablet in hand. Mr. Johnson. I'm sorry about everything that happened tonight. I know this hasn't been the experience we want our passengers to have. It's not your fault, I said, meaning it. You handled that as well as anyone could. I appreciate that. Look, I've been authorized to offer you some compensation for the trouble. He tapped his tablet. We can refund your seat upgrade fee, provide a travel voucher for future flights, and I can put you on our priority rebooking list if you need to catch an earlier flight tomorrow. Tomorrow. The word hit like a slap. There's no way to get to Denver any sooner than this flight. Marcus checked his tablet, frowning. Unfortunately, this was the last direct flight tonight. There are some connecting flights through Chicago or Phoenix, but with the delays. He did some quick calculations. You'd actually arrive later than staying on this flight. My phone rang. Sarah, my assistant. How bad is it? I answered without preamble. Not good. I've been calling around, and Mr. Chen's assistant is being very firm about the 9 a.m. start time. Apparently, they're flying out to Singapore at noon, so there's zero flexibility. Chen Industries. 3 years of relationship building, 6 months of proposal development, and countless late nights had led to this one presentation. If I missed it, that was it. Game over. What about moving the meeting later in the morning? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I tried. They said if we can't make the scheduled time, they'll go with the backup proposal from Morrison and Associates. Morrison and Associates. My biggest competitors, who'd been trying to steal this client for 2 years. I hung up and stared out the window at the ground crew beginning their inspection. Other passengers were settling in for the long haul, some curling up with blankets, others breaking out laptops to work. That's when I realized something that made my blood run cold. Even if we took off right now, even if everything went perfectly, I was going to land in Denver at 8 a.m. at the earliest. Factor in deplaning, baggage claim, and transportation to the hotel for a shower and change of clothes. I'd never make a 9 a.m. meeting. Linda Henderson had just destroyed 3 years of my life. But as I sat there in my properly assigned seat, watching the ground crew methodically inspect every inch of the aircraft, a new thought began forming. A desperate, probably stupid thought. What if I didn't go to the hotel first? What if I went straight from the airport to the meeting? It was insane. I'd be wearing wrinkled clothes, probably smell like airplane, and definitely look like I'd been awake all night. But it might be my only shot. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. Time for Plan B. Plan B started with a frantic call to my hotel in Denver. I need to cancel my room and have my presentation materials waiting at the front desk for pickup, I told the confused night clerk. Yes, I know it's 2 a.m. Yes, this is an emergency. Next call, my company's travel coordinator, who was definitely not happy to hear from me at this hour. David, I need a car service waiting at Denver International the moment we land. Not a taxi, not an Uber, a professional car service that can get me downtown in record time. Do you know what time it is? David groaned. Do you know how much the Chin Industries contract is worth? I shot back. That got his attention. I'll make some calls. Around me, other passengers were watching my increasingly desperate phone conversations with a mixture of sympathy and secondhand anxiety. The woman across the aisle leaned over. Big meeting, she asked. Career-defining, I replied, then immediately regretted oversharing with a stranger. I'm a corporate consultant, she said. Been there. Want some advice? At this point, I was ready to accept help from anyone. Please. Skip the hotel entirely. Use the airport bathroom to freshen up, they have those fancy ones past security with actual amenities. Keep a backup shirt in your carry-on always. And if you're presenting to Asian business people, especially Chinese, showing up looking like you've sacrificed everything to be there isn't necessarily a bad thing. It shows commitment. I stared at her. You might have just saved my career. Sarah Chen, by any chance, she asked with a knowing smile. My jaw dropped. How did you? Chen Industries is my client too. Different division. Trust me, the old man respects dedication over appearance. Show up, be honest about what happened, and nail your presentation. He'll remember the effort. But just as hope was starting to creep back in, Captain Rodriguez's voice came over the intercom again. Folks, we've discovered a minor mechanical issue during our inspection that needs to be addressed. We're looking at an additional hour delay while maintenance takes a look. 3 hours total. I did the math again and felt my stomach drop into my shoes. Even with the most optimistic timeline, I'd be walking into that meeting at 9:30 a.m. 30 minutes late for a client who'd explicitly said punctuality was non-negotiable. This is unbelievable, muttered a passenger behind me. First the crazy lady, now this. That's when it hit me. I pulled out my phone and started recording a video message. Mr. Chen, this is James Johnson from Meridian Solutions. I'm currently on a delayed flight due to a serious security incident. A passenger was arrested for federal aviation violations after stealing my seat and disrupting the entire flight. We're now facing additional mechanical delays. I paused, choosing my words carefully. I want you to know that I will be at your office this morning, even if I have to come directly from the airport. This contract means everything to me and my team, and no entitled passenger or mechanical issue is going to stop me from presenting the proposal we've spent 6 months perfecting. I should arrive by 9:30 a.m. at the latest, and I hope you'll give me the opportunity to show you why Meridian Solutions is the right choice for your expansion. I sent the video and immediately called Sarah. I need you to forward that video to Chen's assistant right now, along with our flight information and news articles about the passenger incident when they come out. James, are you sure about this? What if they just cancel altogether? Through the window, I could see maintenance crews surrounding our plane with diagnostic equipment. More delays seemed inevitable. Then at least they'll know I tried everything. But I was about to discover that everything wasn't enough. My phone rang. Chen's assistant. This couldn't be good news. I stared at my phone screen for a full 3 seconds before answering, my heart hammering against my ribs. This is James. Mr. Johnson, this is Patricia Wong, Mr. Chen's executive assistant. Her voice was crisp and professional, giving away nothing. I received your video message. Ms. Wong, I can explain. Mr. Chen watched it as well, she continued, cutting me off. He's asked me to inform you that punctuality is indeed non-negotiable for this meeting. My stomach plummeted. This was it. 3 years of work down the drain because some entitled woman couldn't sit in her assigned seat. However, Patricia continued, and I nearly dropped the phone. Mr. Chen was quite impressed by your resourcefulness in handling the situation. He's moved the meeting to 10 a.m. to accommodate your delay. I actually felt dizzy with relief. Are you serious? Mr. Chen rarely jokes about business meetings, Mr. Johnson. He said, and I quote, anyone dedicated enough to document federal crimes to protect a business meeting deserves an opportunity to present. I laughed, probably sounding slightly unhinged. Thank you. Thank you so much. I won't let him down. See that you don't. 10 a.m. sharp. The address is. The line went dead. I looked at my phone in confusion, then noticed the bars had disappeared entirely. Around me, other passengers were experiencing the same thing. A chorus of no signal and what happened to the Wi-Fi filled the cabin. Marcus appeared in the aisle looking frazzled. Folks, we're experiencing some communication issues related to the maintenance work. Should be resolved shortly. But it wasn't resolved shortly. 20 minutes passed with no updates, no Wi-Fi, and no cell service. The businessman across the aisle was getting increasingly agitated, pacing in the small space and muttering about missed connections. That's when the real problem became clear. I couldn't call Sarah back to confirm the new meeting time. I couldn't access my presentation files stored in the cloud. And most critically, I couldn't contact the car service David was supposed to arrange. The woman next to me, the corporate consultant who'd given me the earlier advice, noticed my growing panic. What's wrong now? I can't reach my assistant. The meeting got moved to 10 a.m., but now I can't coordinate anything. No car service, no way to get my materials from the hotel, nothing. She pulled out a business card. Rebecca Martinez, Martinez Consulting. Give me your assistant's number and your hotel information. I travel to Denver monthly, I know people. You do that for a stranger. Honey, after watching you handle that entitled nightmare with more class than she deserved. Consider it professional courtesy. I gave her the information just as the lights in the cabin flickered ominously. A collective groan rose from the passengers as we realized our problems were multiplying. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom, distorted by static. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some electrical issues related to tonight's maintenance check. We're working to resolve them as quickly as possible. The man behind me leaned forward. Electrical issues? That doesn't sound good. It wasn't good. Through the window, I could see more maintenance vehicles arriving, including what looked like a specialized electrical unit. The ground crew was moving with increased urgency. My phone finally caught a bar of signal and immediately started buzzing with missed messages. Sarah, David, my boss, even my mom asking if I'd landed safely. But the message that made my blood turn to ice was from Patricia Wong, sent 20 minutes ago. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Chen has decided to move the meeting back to 9 a.m. due to schedule conflicts. Please confirm receipt. I stared at the timestamp. The message had come through during our communication blackout, which meant I just lost the 1-hour buffer that might have saved my career. Rebecca saw my face and frowned. What now? The meeting got moved back to 9 a.m. I just got the message. She winced. That's problematic. That's impossible, I corrected her. Outside, sparks suddenly flew from somewhere near the plane's nose, and the maintenance crew scattered momentarily before regrouping with additional equipment. Captain Rodriguez came back on the intercom. Folks, I'm afraid we're looking at a longer delay than anticipated. The man behind me stood up abruptly. How much longer? But Marcus was already shaking his head before the question was fully asked. We don't have an estimate yet. That's when it hit me. Linda Henderson might have been removed from the plane, but she was still destroying my life from whatever airport holding cell they'd stuffed her into. And there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. I sat there staring at Patricia Wong's message, watching my career dissolve in real time, when Rebecca suddenly grabbed my arm. Wait, she said, pulling out her phone. I have an idea. What if you don't take this flight at all? What do you mean? Private charter. I know a guy who runs executive flights out of here. Expensive as hell, but if this contract is worth what you say it is. My brain started spinning calculations. A private charter would cost thousands, money I definitely didn't have lying around. But if I could land in Denver by 7 a.m., get to the meeting by 9. How much are we talking? Probably 8 to 10,000 for a last-minute charter. I nearly choked. I don't have that kind of money. Company credit card. I thought about it. My boss had given me discretionary authority for client-related expenses, but this was way beyond anything in the normal budget. Still, if I landed a Chin contract. Call your guy, I said. Rebecca was already dialing. I watched her face as she spoke in hushed tones, and my hope began deflating again. Even from this side of the conversation, I could tell it wasn't going well. What's the problem? I asked when she hung up. 2 problems. First, the cost is actually $12,000 because of the short notice and overnight crew requirements. My stomach lurched. And second, weather system moving in. He can't guarantee takeoff clearance before 4 a.m. I did the math. Even with a private jet, a 4 a.m. departure would put me in Denver around 6:30 a.m. Cutting it incredibly close, but maybe doable. I'll take it, I heard myself saying. Rebecca stared at me. James, that's $12,000. Are you sure? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Sarah. James, thank God you picked up. I've got good news and bad news. Bad news first. The car service fell through. Apparently there's some kind of transportation strike starting at 6 a.m., something about driver working conditions. And the good news? Your presentation materials are ready for pickup at the hotel. But James. I just got word from corporate. The Chin contract approval is being reviewed by the board tomorrow. If you miss this meeting, there might not be another chance. They're already questioning the ROI on this pursuit. The weight of that statement settled on me like a physical force. This wasn't just about one presentation anymore. This was about my entire professional future. Sarah, I need you to authorize a $12,000 charter flight. Silence. James, I can't authorize that level of expenditure. You'd need VP approval, and Richard won't be in the office until. Then put it on my personal card. Your personal card. Are you insane? Maybe I was. But as I sat in this broken airplane, watching maintenance crews struggle with electrical problems that seemed to multiply by the minute, I realized I'd reached a breaking point. Linda Henderson had stolen more than just my seat, she'd stolen my timeline, my backup plans, and possibly my future. Rebecca, I said, turning to my unlikely ally. Make the call. Book the charter. But before she could dial, the cabin lights went out completely. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in an eerie red glow. Around us, passengers began murmuring with increasing concern. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom, barely audible through heavy static. Ladies and gentlemen, we've experienced a significant electrical failure. For safety reasons, all passengers will need to deplane while we resolve this issue. Rebecca looked at me in the red emergency lighting. Well, she said grimly, looks like you're definitely not taking this flight. As we gathered our belongings in the dark, I realized Linda Henderson had just gotten her final revenge. As we shuffled off the plane in the emergency lighting, my phone finally got full signal again and immediately exploded with notifications. Missed calls, texts, emails, all arriving at once like a digital avalanche. But one text made my blood freeze. Mr. Johnson, due to weather advisories for tomorrow morning, Mr. Chen has moved the meeting to 8:30 a.m. This is final. Patricia Wong. 8:30 a.m. I stared at the timestamp, sent 15 minutes ago, while we were still trapped in the electrical dead zone. Rebecca, I said, grabbing her arm as we entered the terminal. The meeting just got moved up another 30 minutes. 8:30. She stopped walking and turned to stare at me. That's not happening. Not even with a charter. But I was already calling the charter company directly. If Rebecca's contact couldn't help, maybe I could find someone else. The phone rang 4 times before a gravelly voice answered. Mile High Executive Aviation, this is Bob. Bob, I need an emergency charter to Denver tonight. Money is no object. Money might not be an object for you, but the FAA is an object for me. We've got a weather system moving in, and I'm not risking my pilots or my planes for any amount of cash. What about? Son, I've been doing this for 30 years. When I say the weather's too dangerous, that's the end of the conversation. He hung up. I stood in the middle of the terminal, surrounded by my fellow passengers from the Linda Henderson disaster, and felt something close to despair. Around me, people were rebooking flights, calling hotels, making new plans. But I was out of options. That's when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Having trouble with travel arrangements? I turned around to find Linda Henderson standing there in handcuffs, flanked by 2 federal agents. She was smirking at me with pure vindictive satisfaction. "You," I said, my voice barely controlled. "Me," she replied cheerfully. "Fancy meeting you here. How's that important meeting working out for you?" One of the agents, a woman in her 40s with the patience of someone who dealt with difficult prisoners all night, stepped forward. "Ma'am, you're not supposed to be talking to other passengers." "Oh, but Agent Morrison, this is the man who ruined my life," Linda said with mock sweetness. "I just wanted to thank him." "Thank me?" "Well, you see, after I was arrested, I had plenty of time to think. And I realized something wonderful. Even though I'm facing federal charges, you're still going to miss your precious meeting." Her eyes gleamed with malice. "I may have lost, but you lost bigger." The agent looked between us with growing understanding. "This is the passenger from the seat incident." "The very one," Linda confirmed. "The vindictive little man who had me arrested over a simple seating misunderstanding." I felt rage building in my chest, but Rebecca appeared beside me and put a restraining hand on my arm. "Don't," she warned quietly. "She wants you to lose it." But Linda wasn't done. "I heard you on the phone earlier, talking about some big contract. 2-point-something million. That must be devastating to lose over something so petty." "Ma'am, that's enough," Agent Morrison said firmly. "We need to move." "Just one more thing," Linda called as they started walking away. "I hope you learned something tonight about karma." As they led her away toward airport security, I realized she was right about one thing: I had learned about karma. But maybe not the lesson she thought she taught me. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through every contact, every business relationship, every favor I'd ever been owed. If traditional solutions wouldn't work, it was time to get creative. Because Linda Henderson was about to discover that karma was a two-way street. I scrolled through my contacts with desperate focus, when a name jumped out at me that I'd almost forgotten: Marcus Rivera, my college roommate who'd become a helicopter pilot for medical evacuations. We'd lost touch over the years, but social media told me he was still in Colorado. It was 3 a.m., but I called anyway. "James." "Jesus, what time is it?" Marcus's voice was groggy but alert, the voice of someone used to emergency calls. "Marcus, I need a massive favor. Are you still flying helicopters?" "Yeah, but medical transport only." "Why?" I explained everything in rapid-fire sentences: the stolen seat, Linda's arrest, the electrical failure, the meeting that could save my career. Marcus listened without interrupting. "So you need to get from Denver International to downtown by 8:30 a.m., he said when I finished. "Earlier if possible." "The meeting is at 8:30. "James, I can't use company aircraft for personal transport. I'd lose my license." My heart sank. "I understand, I just thought." "But," he continued, "I know a guy who does tours and private charters. Civilian operations, totally above board. Let me make a call." While I waited, Rebecca reappeared with coffee and a grim expression. "I've been working my contacts too," she said. "Got some intelligence on your chin meeting that you're not going to like." "What now?" "Morrison and Associates has been circling like vultures. Their team flew in yesterday and they're apparently prepared to present immediately if you don't show." The coffee turned to acid in my stomach. They knew about our delays. Word travels fast in our industry. They're probably watching flight tracking apps, waiting for you to miss your slot. My phone rang. "Marcus." "Good news and bad news," he said. "My guy Steve can fly you, but his helicopter is at a small airfield about 40 minutes from where you are now. And he's charging emergency rates, 5,000 cash. 5,000 on top of the 12 I've been ready to spend on a charter jet. But at this point, what choice did I have? Deal. How do I get to this airfield?" That's the bad news. The transportation strike started early. No taxis, no rideshares, no airport shuttles. I looked around the terminal. At 3 a.m., it was mostly empty except for stranded passengers and cleaning crews. No car rental desks were open. No buses were running. "I'm stuck," I said. "What about that woman who helped you?" "Rebecca something." I looked over at Rebecca, who was on her own phone, apparently fighting her own logistics battle. She caught my eye and walked over. "What's wrong now?" she asked. "I found a helicopter, but it's 40 minutes away and there's no way to get there." Rebecca's eyes lit up. "Actually, there might be. Remember how I said I travel to Denver monthly? I keep a car in long-term parking here. You're willing to drive me to a random airfield at 3 a.m.? Honey, after tonight's entertainment, I'm invested in seeing how this story ends. Besides," she grinned, "I bill my driving time at $300 an hour." As we hurried toward the parking garage, my phone buzzed with another message from Patricia Wong: weather advisory lifted. Meeting confirmed for 8:30 a.m. No further changes. Finally, something going right. But then Rebecca's car wouldn't start. "No, no, no," she muttered, turning the key again. Nothing but clicking sounds. "How long has this been sitting here?" I asked. 3 weeks. The battery's probably dead." I stared at the dashboard in disbelief. After everything we'd been through, we were going to be defeated by a dead car battery in a parking garage. That's when we heard footsteps echoing through the concrete structure. A security guard was making his rounds, flashlight in hand. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. The security guard turned out to be our guardian angel. His name was Carl, a retired mechanic who'd been working airport security for 5 years. When Rebecca explained our situation, he just shook his head and pulled out jumper cables from his security cart. "You folks have had quite a night," he said, connecting the cables. "I heard about that crazy woman who got arrested. Federal charges, they're saying." The car roared to life on the first try. Carl refused Rebecca's offer of cash, just smiled and said, sometimes people need a little help to get where they're going. 40 minutes later, we pulled up to a small airfield where a helicopter sat waiting, rotors already spinning. Steve, the pilot, was exactly what central casting would order for, grizzled aviation veteran, weathered face, confident demeanor, and the kind of calm that comes from thousands of flight hours. You the desperate businessman, he shouted over the rotor noise. That's me. Well, climb in. We've got a narrow weather window, and downtown Denver traffic is murder even from the air. As we lifted off into the pre-dawn darkness, I finally allowed myself to believe this might actually work. The city lights spread out below us like a circuit board, and I could see the sun beginning to hint at the eastern horizon. ETA 20 minutes. Steve called back to me. Where exactly downtown? I gave him the address, and he nodded. Know it well. They've got a small helipad on the roof. Probably cost you extra, but your meeting's more important than their landing fees. At 8:15 a.m., we touched down on top of the Chen Industries building. I handed Steve $5,000 in cash, money I'd gotten from the airport ATM using 3 different cards, and sprinted toward the rooftop access door. The elevator seemed to take forever. When the doors opened on the executive floor, Patricia Wong was waiting with an expression of pure astonishment. Mr. Johnson. We heard a helicopter. Long story, I said, straightening my wrinkled shirt. But I'm here. She led me to a conference room where Mr. Chen sat with 2 other executives. He looked up as I entered, his weathered face breaking into what might have been a smile. Mr. Johnson. I must admit, I am impressed by your determination. Mr. Chen, I apologize for the dramatic arrival. It's been an unusual evening. So I understand. My assistant showed me the news coverage of your flight. Federal arrest of a disruptive passenger, mechanical failures, electrical problems. He leaned back in his chair. Most people would have simply rescheduled. This meeting was too important for that, sir. Mr. Chen nodded slowly. Tell me, what did you learn from this experience? I thought for a moment. That sometimes the biggest obstacles come from the most unexpected places. But also that if you're committed to your goals and willing to ask for help, solutions have a way of appearing. And the woman who started all this trouble. I smiled. She thought she was teaching me a lesson about karma. She was right, just not the lesson she intended. Mr. Chen laughed, a genuine sound that filled the room. Mr. Johnson, anyone who lands a helicopter on my building at dawn to honor a business commitment is someone I want to do business with. The contract was signed by 9:30 a.m. 3 months later, I received a newspaper clipping in the mail with no return address. It was a small item about Linda Henderson pleading guilty to federal aviation violations and being sentenced to community service and a permanent no-fly list placement. Sometimes karma doesn't need help. But sometimes it doesn't hurt to give it a little push.